Hi everyone, my name's Paula Taylor and this is Tackle the Feelings Before the Behavior, or TFBB. And today I wanted to speak about grief, but grieving the living. So much of what we understand about grief is around death, and this is the main area that we experience the most hectic grief, I would say, but it's not the only area we experience grief. Death as well isn't always about actual dying. Grief is about death, but sometimes the death is about what you would maybe call a rebirth, an ending. It's about loss and change and endings. And it is the process and the journey that we need to go on to integrate that change and that ending so that we can get closure and acceptance and start afresh. We need to say goodbye to aspects of ourselves, of others, and we need to mourn what was, so to speak, if that makes sense. So grief, in terms of grieving the living, can be anything. It can be grieving a relationship, it can be grieving friendships, it can be grieving family that's, you've changed, you've let go, they're toxic. It can be grieving a pet, losing a pet, or having to surrender your pet somewhere because you're moving, or whatever it is. There's so much grief out there. There's even an aspect of grief where we grieve parts of ourselves, grieve our childhood, grieve a home, grieve a career that we can no longer do. We may get an injury and can't do something anymore. There's so much around grief that we perhaps don't always think about and recognize when it comes up in us. And it can look a lot like depression. It can look a lot like, anxiety even, where we are going through a lot, where we are feeling heavy and slowed down and ratty and lost. There's a lot of loss that goes with grief. And we tend to go through some of those same stages that you would in an actual physical death and bereavement, where there's a period of denial before we can accept what's happened. That denial is protective. Our psyches and beings aren't so ready for what's happened to us, for that change, for that loss, for all the feelings that arise from that, for all that we have to let go. There can be anger that this has happened to us, so to speak. There can be a lot of past emotions that arise, things that are brought up from your past, from your childhood, things that you are reflecting on the relationship that you had with that thing or with that person, and what it means for you now. And it takes time to process all that out, and grief really is what we term the process of integrating this loss and this change. And it is big, and it's not one emotion, although sadness is the predominant emotion, because as I always say, sadness is like the nurse that takes you from the ICU to the ward. We need the sadness in order to process, in order to integrate our entire systems. Just like in a physical death, our immune systems can go down, things can happen where we just don't feel ourselves, we don't have motivation, we can feel quite hopeless. The finality of something can be really difficult, and it can be really hard to let go. So grief is honestly something, sorry, the lawnmower is starting. Grief is honestly something that we need to familiarize ourselves with. It's something that we need. I'm going to leave it there because it suddenly got noisy. But I hope that's been helpful, and please leave comments and questions if you need to. And I hope I've just given you something to think about today. Take care. Bye.